Does your wiser, older self now have a message for that 21-year-old self when you were first starting out?
Yeah, I found that a great question, and it was an easy answer for me. I'm very happy with my career journey, and I feel very fortunate. The advice I give to the 21-year-old is to not be in too much of a hurry. The best way to have a successful career is to do a bang-up job of the job you currently have. So let people know that you have ambitions, but don't let that cloud the fact that your core responsibilities have to be done and done very well. And if that's the case, you will get noticed. Don't be in too much of a hurry. Things will evolve as they should. Yes, you need to do things proactively, but things will evolve, and they evolve in a certain way, and it's a combination of making sure you're ready for that next step. Because I've actually had conversations with people where they've said, I've been offered this promotion, I don't feel that I'm ready. So that takes a lot of courage to say that, or to say to your manager, well, I would need extra help to feel that I'm ready. And that, I think, shows a certain business maturity.
Oh, I love that advice. There was a quote that says, the way you do anything is the way you do everything. So it's, when you are doing the job, do it well.
Exactly.
And what advice do you have for ambitious leaders who are looking to grow into your shoes one day?
Find a mentor, get to know yourself, be self-aware, be open to coaching and learning, and work hard.
And when you were hiring people to work with you as part of your team, is there a particular question you always ask someone?
I find the most telling question is, what does success look like for you? Because it brings in a lot of information that the person may, it gives you a sense of how clear they are about their objectives, what it is that they value, how important the job is within the context of their overall lives, how analytical or strategic they may be. So for me, that's always been a good telling question.
Success is such a subjective term.
Precisely, yeah.
And how do you identify your top performers?
Well, through conversations with the leaders, and also by having those special initiatives where people you might not necessarily meet have to come and present to the senior management team. I also find that through when I'm normally traveling pre-COVID, is making sure that you identify those informal stars, and it could be you hold a town hall meeting and you have a conversation, or just someone asks a question that you feel is really strategic, and you say, wow, that person is pretty smart. And then I'll inquire to their manager, oh, tell me about so-and-so. And so I think it's really about keeping your eyes and ears open and being open to feedback too from your leadership team to see where the stars are, and really making sure that you provide them with those opportunities and that feedback and that recognition. It's a multifaceted
kind
of process, yeah. Organic, I'd say.
Do you have any advice for aspiring leaders who are working under poor leadership?
Throughout my career, I've had some strong leaders and I've had some poor leaders. And, one thing, it's kind of sad to say, but, if you report to someone who's not a strong leader, is you have to be able to work inside yourself to be your own leader, regardless. Some of the best lessons that I've learned are from poor leaders about how not to do something. And sometimes you have to learn that before you can learn, and I'll give the example of, I had a poor leader at one point and I was at a senior level, but I wasn't the CEO. I found it less stressful to become a CEO after, because I kind of set the tone, and I had learned a lot about how not to manage and lead. And so it's recognizing those lessons, but you can't use somebody else's poor leadership as an excuse not to lead your own and not to want to accomplish on your own. You have to hold yourself accountable and not use that as an excuse, I would say.
And what are some of those lessons that you've kept with you? You said that you've learned.
Always about self-awareness, and doing a little bit of a check and balance at the end of the day to say, okay, here were the situations. How do I feel about how I did? And a lot of self-talk. And, being happy about how something was handled, or being able to say, I wish I'd done that differently. And this isn't about beating yourself up. It's about seeing each day as a bit of a lesson in life, and seeing how you feel. And also knowing yourself, that self-talk is really important. And being happy with how you're coming across, or, recognizing that you could have done something differently. And you've heard the expression, there's nothing worse than being mad at yourself, is, being able to recognize, why is it that I'm feeling this way? And being able to analyze it without overdoing it, and just say, okay, I'm going to give myself permission to have made a mistake. I could have handled that differently. Next time I'll know. And really being able to do that. And I think as you gain more experience and more maturity as a person, that becomes easier to do. And I refuse to buy into the theory that as you get older you don't change as much. I think it's the reverse. If you're a lifelong learner, based on your experience and your learning, you evolve all the way. I'm a different person today than I was yesterday, and tomorrow I'll be even different too. And the excitement of life and constantly evolving as a professional and as a person it's fun. It's something that I think makes a person who they are.
And how would leaders self-reflect if they're not at that stage where they're fully aware of how they present their self-talk? What's the best way for them to begin that process?
Well, I think having a mentor is good, because if you establish a trusting relationship, I do a lot of role playing with my mentees. Say, with the greatest respect, can I share an observation with you? And then you give them advice. Or you'll say, well, maybe if you phrased it this way, it would come across differently and better. And so, what I have with a lot of the mentees is a monthly call to discuss situations, with the agreement that if there's a tough situation that comes up where they just want to, run it past or talk out loud about the challenge they're having, they have the permission to just let me know that we can talk. And I find that very rewarding, because oftentimes it's about how you ask the question of your mentee, where they find the solution themselves. Right. So it's helping them help themselves. And in time, the more they do that, the more resilience internally that they develop, and the more they can rely on their own mechanism to find solutions.
And for yourself, how do you identify your own blind spots?
Sometimes I'll ask somebody to give me that feedback. So, for example, in my last few years as a CEO, there are 360 evaluations that are done with clients and my board and direct reports. Sometimes you're not aware you may be doing something that could be done differently, and it's just being open to that. I think being a leader is probably the most humbling thing you could ever try to do, because you're not always right, and you're going to sometimes hear things that you're not wanting to hear. But I think if you keep yourself open to those things, it's easier then to accept the need to evolve and change, and that makes you happier and less critical of yourself, because you're not perfect, and nobody can be perfect. So that's the kind of rationale that I use for myself. And I always say, if it works for me, hopefully it will work for somebody else. And, when I'm working with a mentee and they talk about a situation where they may have made a mistake, I'm not averse to sharing a mistake I made in the past and telling them a story, because I find theory is great and having that theoretical framework is helpful, but that lived experience and telling stories for me is great learning.